Every business has a moment where the numbers stop making sense.
I was 95% convinced this wasn't going to work. I probably quit my job a little too early.
We weren't accounting for things correctly. It eventually led to us being way over our skis.
The first thing was, well, this is impossible. I can't do it. What did I just get myself into?
At that time, we really couldn't afford it. I mean, mentally, I was filled with self-doubt.
I was down, man. I was probably down for a good 3 months.
This is really kind of negatively impacting our company at this point.
Suffering can mean anything to anyone. But like at the end of the day, you're going to suffer and you just got to suck it up. You just keep going.
I'm Curtis Haney, and I have conversations with business owners in the middle of their hardest financial moments. This is not a highlight reel. This is where we talk about the decisions that were made under pressure with imperfect information and how they navigated the storm. This is the podcast Through the Storm. Thank you for listening / watching our new episode Through the Storm. Today is episode number 1, and so I'm excited that you are here to be a part of this. Today we have a really special episode where we interview Nick Anderson, who is CEO of the consulting business One Accord. They do strategic consulting. He's had a relationship with the business for a number of years, took over as CEO 2 years ago, and we're going to talk about gross margins. And if gross margins don't seem sexy to you, I want to explain to you why it is. The thing is most entrepreneurs overlook the one metric that can dramatically shift or change their business. We focus on revenue, we focus on profits, but gross margin is often one of the most powerful levers that we have available to us. Nick shared that when he came in, their gross margins were 20%, 20 to 40%. And that they knew that he had to immediately shift those to build the business that he wanted to build. So he shared the critical mindset shifts, the strategy changes that he had to make in this business, and things that you can implement yourself as well. He overhauled the pricing structure, the technology of the business, and he talks about how he navigated this fear, uncertainty, and resistance that often comes with widespread business model changes. We're going to break down the real reason margins are holding you back, how to gather and interpret the data in a meaningful way, how to tell the story and position yourself with both your employees, your customers, clients, and then how to be disciplined in this approach. By failing to optimize our gross margins, we risk stagnation or even failure when there's competition in the markets. And we want to master this so that we can prepare ourselves for the next stages of business. So whether you're a CEO, a founder, business owner, or really even just someone who has a vested interest in the gross margin of the business you're working in, this episode is essential listening to build a scaling, profitable business and build a sustainable future. I hope you'll get inspired, take control of those numbers, and implement changes confidently after listening to this. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Nick Anderson. Nick, thank you so much for joining me today. Me and Nick had the pleasure of going golfing together earlier this year, and you get to learn a lot about people on the golf course.
Yes.
So Nick is CEO of One Accord. Can you give us just a brief little snippet of One Accord, what you guys do?
I'd rather talk about golf. I mean, the thing you know about me is it doesn't matter if it's 100 yards out in Dog Lake Right, I'm taking driver. Yeah. I only play one game. So, I mean, you said it. One Accord, we're a consulting firm. I think for context in our conversation, I am 50% owner and CEO as of 2 years ago. The company was formed 25 years ago. So my business partner is the founder, and there were 23 years of history before I came in as co-owner and CEO. So I was a banker for 25 years. We would hang out at the same kind of wine and cheese events, right? We'd do the business networking thing. And I admired the firm. And when I was a banker, I would say, gosh, maybe when I retire, I could go into consulting and work there. No idea I would end up owning half the company and running it. I left banking, started consulting independently. And Jeff, my now partner, is and was a friend. And I just went to him and said, Jeff, how did you build One Accord? I want to do something a little different, but you've been successful. So we had kind of this mentorship relationship. And at some point along the way, the conversation was, well, hey, we're basically playing the same game on the same field, but wearing different jerseys. What if we merge? So One Accord acquired the business that I started, the brand that I started. I brought the client relationships and the revenues that I had in, and we worked out, that was a part of the equity buy-in. And so that's relevant. 25 years in banking, a couple of years consulting. Some of that is overlap, but this is my first true entrepreneurial, owner, operator, and then in the space. So I've had to learn a lot in 2 years.
Yeah. So then when you came into One Accord, you mentioned that you had to do some work on the gross margin side. Were there other orders of business that when you first came in and kind of took over that role, what was kind of the top problem that you saw and that you solved for immediately?
Let's give context because, context is so my official day one was January 1, 2024. I came in and I was hanging out around the office, and Jeff and I started talking mid-year 2023. The coming in as an owner partner, it takes some time, crawl, walk, run. But that was also pretty fast. 6 months to do a transaction like that's pretty fast. So just in the January 1, 2024, this is a couple of years post pandemic shutdown, reopen, economy, right? So there's some context there. Going into 2020, One Accord was up and to the right. Revenues were increasing significantly year over year. Client count, many of the metrics were improving year over year, but for one, and that was gross margin. So this is a problem that had persisted through, from the beginning of the organization based on the way the company was originally modeled. So the original financial model just wasn't profitable enough, okay? But more context to here. So going into 2020, high watermarks on revenue, high watermarks on clients, the team was bigger, so on and so forth. Only one of, I think the number was 25 clients, only one disengaged in the COVID years. The rest, the firm saw through their engagements. But the company didn't sign a lot of new business in those years for obvious reasons. So there was a downturn. There was also an attempt to do what Jeff and I have done now successfully, and that is that he brought in a CEO. So Jeff, here again, context, he founded the company 25 years ago. He's 20 years older, 18 years older than me. So I am like the next generation. I'm the next 25 years. We're doing succession plan. The person that he brought in prior to me is no longer here, and we can just say that was an unsuccessful attempt. That too resulted in a decline in business, right? So there was a guy here. I don't know how to say it otherwise. Ryan. He's now a really good friend, and he stepped in as what I would label as like the turnaround guy. So he was 1 year as a kind of COO, righting the ship. Ryan did a ton of work in expense control, so SG&A expense, right? Downsized an internal accounting team, downsized marketing spend, which he and I would arm wrestle over. Really just, he's the turnaround guy, so he cut expenses down to the bone. But that still doesn't fix profitability. Gross margin is not something that you can necessarily fix with the existing book of business. It has to be on the new revenues book. So that was my thing. So all of that context, January 1, 2024, I've got clear visibility into the financial condition, the history, and I know what we need to do. We have to grow revenue at a profitable gross margin.
Okay. So that was problem number one that you came in to solve from that. But you just made an interesting point of you didn't feel like you could reset gross margin with the existing business. Why did you feel like, and I guess why could you not reset that gross margin on the existing business?
Our model, and so I don't know if this is necessary for the listeners or watchers, but
yeah, I think so. I think it's going to be, yeah, I think it'll be helpful. So yeah.
But I'm also thinking like just defining gross margin, right? So I get $1 of revenue, and there is a finance and accounting term called COGS, the cost of goods sold, or in my industry, COS, the cost of services. So we deliver services with people who are consultants. And let's say for every $1 in revenue I receive, 50 cents needs to pay that consultant, which leaves 50 cents to pay for the rent, the computer, the lights, the insurance, my salary, the admin salary, the paper clips, the business cards, right? That the marketing, the advertising, that all becomes SG&A, sales, general, and administrative. So we had existing engagements signed with clients, with consultants that were written at a 20% gross margin. So yeah. I can't just go to our client. I mean, I could, probably not going to work out well, and say, hey, Curtis, listen, I know you've been paying me $1, but my gross margins are out of whack. I need you to pay me $1.30. Right? So I would have to deliver I'd have to deliver more value to justify that additional 30 cents.
Well, and not only that, but if the agreement is written at that 20%, you have to not only get the customer to agree to that higher rate, you have to get the consultant to now agree for a different rate as well.
Yeah.
Right?
So two negotiations. First, Curtis, I need you to pay me more. Hey, consultant, we're in. The good news is you're going to get paid the same, right? But they're like, wait. So in all actuality, I had to rewrite the business model, which meant some of the consultants decided that this wasn't the place they wanted to be. They would say, well, I don't want to do the same work for less money. I'm going to go try to earn the business on my own. And I quite literally said, like, awesome. I support you. I'm with you. Like, do that thing. This is how we're running our business. I also had to justify that additional gross margin. So we had to completely change our business model. It used to be that consultants, if you were interested to work with me under the old model, okay, Curtis, we're going to give you an email and a business card and some tools. Now go sell your services, and then we keep 20% of what you sell. And that really, it worked for some people and it turned other people off. Like, well, why wouldn't I just go do it on my own and keep it all myself? And here again, like, cool, you should. If you can, you should. Most people can't. You and I, we have a friend, Harrison. He's the one helping independent consultants like learn how to sell. Like, there's a whole space there, right? But for us internally, I had to enhance the business to the point where I was adding so much value to the consultants that are here that it made sense for them to reduce the percentage, right? From, call it 80 cents out of the dollar down to 50 cents on the dollar. And I'm so confident in this that I'm saying it publicly on a podcast and anybody can watch. Like, I'm really transparent about this with the team. I also have to deliver more value to clients so that I can be paid more and still pay our consultants the same. There's two ways to get a higher gross margin, right? You can lower your cost of goods, or you can raise your revenue with cost of goods fixed, or you can do both. And the ideal scenario is that it's a give on both sides.
Yeah. So, and to back up, because when we get into these financial concepts, sometimes it can be a little bit deep and confusing. So if you think about it from a dollar perspective, if you have $1 of revenue and your gross margin is 20%, that means your 80 cents of that dollar is going directly to a consultant, which means you have only 20 cents left for all your overhead. Because your contract was locked in at that 20% margin, you could raise your prices by 20%, but your margin is still 20%. So now that consultant, instead of getting, so if you raise it 20 cents, by 20%, so to $1.20, that consultant is now getting 24 cents, which is a great raise for them, but you're only getting 4 extra cents, right? So if you think about that in the long term, I think what you probably saw is that wasn't going to be sustainable as you continued to grow,
Yep.
right?
Just won't work.
And you then had to adjust that model. When you came to that realization that you're going to have to adjust that model, what things did you go? I mean, you mentioned there's only 2 things you can change, but what kind of mental gymnastics did you go through to kind of think through, one, what are our options? And 2, how are we going to communicate this to both sides of the agreement, both sides of both parties, the customer and the consultant?
Here's the thing I love about being an entrepreneur is, like, if you give me 60 minutes, I'm going to have 90 different daydreams, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to be dreaming of buying a Ferrari and living on a yacht, and like immediately thereafter, I'm dreaming about selling all my stocks in my real estate just to cover payroll. So the mental gymnastics that you said, right? The first thing was, well, this is impossible. I can't do it. What did I just get myself into? There's no way I can charge customers more. There's no way I can get consultants at this price. It's impossible, right? I fight that every day. So the step that I took was to acknowledge that I don't know everything. I don't know hardly anything. And I went and I got data. I looked at data. And one of the things that I used as a banker, and I have access to, we have access to a lot of data, so I got to kind of do what we do for clients on myself. And I looked at industry data for management consulting firms. And I said, what is the standard for gross margin? What's the average? And the average is 40%. So if that's the average, that means that some shops like ours were below at 20%. And that means that some shops are higher at 60%, which means the average is 40. And as soon as I saw that, the competitive part of my entrepreneurial spirit was like, well, I'm not below average. Knock that off, right? And neither are we, and neither is our brand, and neither are our consultants, right? So the mental gymnastics were, okay, we're really, really good. Let's go tell that story. Let's earn the right clients, and let's commit into this. Now, change management is very hard. Not because the strategy was difficult for me, Like I can do the math. It's on paper. It's right there. But now I gotta talk to people. And I gotta listen to the consultants that are like, well, what do you mean? Like it's always been 20. You can't do that. And I'm in relationship with these people. I gotta sit with them and I gotta look them in the eye and I gotta say, Curtis, I understand. And this is how it is. Hard. And we're 2 years in and I still have people like, well, it used to be this way. And I'm like, buddy, you probably are going to tell me that 5 years from now. Yeah. I understand. But here are the data, right? I'm going to show you the report, the public data. This is what everybody else is doing, right? And then, just the gross margin. It is, I think, the single most important financial metric that an entrepreneur should know and understand. And I say that because of my lived experience, because this is real. Like, this is the difference between us being a going concern and not. That's financial speak for like staying in business, right? Yeah. You look at the gross margins for NVIDIA, and most people know who NVIDIA is. Their gross margins are 75%. 75%, right? Tech-enabled consulting firms are 60 to 80% gross margins. And certain areas of their firms, they're higher, certain areas they're lower, different business lines, etc. So if the average is 40, we're at 20, like we have to at least be at average. And then I want to be at the top of the range there. And so those, what did I go through? Fear, uncertainty, doubt. There's no way I can do this. It's not possible. People won't pay me. People are going to quit. Going through the conversations. People don't like me. I'm a bad person. Right? Yeah. And I just have to stay consistent. And the language that I use with the team internally is margin discipline. Mm-hmm. Now, I also changed compensation structure for key roles so that the people with the most like direct influence are compensated based on gross margin. So here's the thing I heard at one point. Owners talk to employees and say, like, I want you to act like an owner, Curtis. Like, take ownership in this company. And you're like, yeah, but I don't own it, right? So if I'm going to ask you to act like an owner, I better make you an owner. What's more realistic, I think, for me is to say, behave as though your compensation depends on the decisions that you're making, because it does. And I just have to make that so. Yep.
Yeah. So when you had to have those conversations, so kind of go back here one time, and you had some people quit or determined that they weren't going to go, did you have any current engagements that you had consultants walk away from because of the change going forward, or do they keep their old, they obviously, because those old agreements remain the same?
Yep. Yeah.
So they just didn't take on any additional clients within those. They just stayed with that kind of old consulting agreement and continued forward.
Yeah. And it's on a spectrum, right? So for the consultants that work with us that are 1099, it's like kind of take it or leave it. It's not like they quit, they resigned. Some just kind of stopped showing up or engaging or staying in communication. But here again, we had to change our model. So it used to be, Curtis, you want to come work at One Accord, here's your business card, your email, go get business, bring it in, and you get to keep 80% of that. Now, it is, we are One Accord, we are marketing to clients, we are creating opportunities, we are bringing clients in. So when there is an opportunity and you are the right person for the job, hey, Curtis, I've got an opportunity. Here's the scope of work. Here's the compensation. Would you like it? Yes or no? And that just, it's a whole, paradigm shift, right? For those 1099 contractors, we really do like treat them as contractors. Now, there are some people this isn't like specific to the gross margin conversation, but my intention is to create equity opportunities for people on the team that help us grow. So they can and will become owners. And so some of the folks are really attracted into that vision. They want to be an owner. We're going to be organized a lot like a law firm or CPA firm where there's partners and shareholders, et cetera, right? And some people are excited by that. And so they want to be in the marketplace helping to grow revenue, helping us sell. And we will compensate those employees or those individuals for the revenue that they bring in, whether or not they service the client. So if you're in the market and you're talking with someone and they say, hey, you know, we'd really like to do some strategic planning, that may not be your subject matter expertise. So you could then refer that into the company and be paid for that. Here again, our financial compensation model changed, which means that some people have decided this isn't the right place for me. That happens. I'm really clear about our financial model, and I'm very clear about our gross margins, upfront, ongoing, repetitive. Like I talk about this a lot, so that the people who choose to come into the firm, they know what they're coming into.
I want to actually go back to, you know, this concept that you mentioned with NVIDIA, and you mentioned that scale of, you know, they've got that 70 to 80% gross margin. And the question is, how and why do they get that big of a margin? And part of the reason is that they are delivering something over and above, you know, and talking about it from a consulting perspective, over and above that has higher level value than strictly just an exchange of a person, right? And so when you're talking about the 20% gross margin, what that is communicating to your customers is that we're essentially a recruiting firm that's finding the right talent to place with you. And then we're just connecting you with them. And then it's that relationship. So if you're a business that's trying to add more value than that, and you come and you tell them and they understand that's the model, the customer understands that's the model, there is cognitive dissonance that happens because they can't understand how you can deliver what you're delivering. So by changing your model, you say that you're now a value add in this process, right? That is communicated, that margin communicates that both to the consultant and to the customer. So let's talk about what is your guys' value add and how did you justify that increase on both, that increase in margin for you on both the customer and the consultant side? What was that? Obviously, we kind of talked about what those conversations would look like, but what specifically was communicated to say a customer about that, the additional value being added to them in this new arrangement?
Yeah, I mean, you just said the thing, which is in the old model, we would deploy a person to a company and that person would go solo. And so we operated much like a staffing organization. You need a person for that. We got a person. There you go. That person was sent into the company on their own. So there really isn't a whole lot of value other than we're a transaction in between. So we don't do that anymore. I don't send anyone solo into an engagement. There's always a 2-person minimum on an engagement. And that second person who is not in the company doing the work that we do, that second person is one of our managing principals. They're a client account manager, and they are accountable to the client and to the consultant on a weekly basis to ensure that we are delivering on scope.
Mm-hmm.
This keeps our clients engaged and our consultants on scope. Because one of the things that happens, like some of our competitors in the marketplace are, we kind of refer to them as body shops. They have a stack of resumes and they'll send people out, right? Or it's that individual that does consulting and they sell on their own. Well, when it's just one person, that person's like interest is in staying employed, and they'll go left if there's money or opportunity there. They'll go right, they'll get off scope, right? And that detracts from the results-based outcomes that our clients hire us for. So they're not engaging with us so that they can have a guy in their shop 3 days a week. They're engaging us. They're engaging us because they want to sell their company 2 years from now, and they have a number, and they want that transaction to go smoothly. So our 2 people or our 3 people or 4 people that are on that team are led by a client account manager that has that North Star. So that's structurally a thing. Then what we say is you might have Joe 3 days a week in the company doing the thing. Like, you got your consultant there. And then you've got Brian, the client account manager, that's ensuring that we're, on track. But then behind that, you've got the entire firm. You've got all of One Accord. And amongst us, we have sales professionals, operations professionals, technology professionals, strategic professionals. We've got access to data. We've got networks and support systems. We've got a recruiting arm. So when if your company's growing, we can help fill positions. If you have turnover, we can help replace those positions. If you need new sales strategy or marketing strategy, we've got resources for that. If Joe is in that consulting engagement and he runs into an issue or a problem, he's backed up by 40 people.
Yeah.
So that's just an entirely different paradigm than here's Joe, and here's your invoice for the next year or whatnot. And what used to happen regularly is that the clients that would hire us and Joe would just get sent out like 3 months, 6 months in. They're like, well, why are we paying One Accord? Joe, let me just hire you directly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we don't play that game. That's
you're also, when you operate that model, you're operating off this sort of promise that because One Accord is the in between, that if Joe were to leave, that One Accord would come in and backfill that, right? But the reality of that model is that doesn't really happen, because now even if you try and backfill, no one else has the knowledge of what went on in that engagement. So it's no different for the customer or for the client than going out and hiring a whole new consultant. So there's no benefit. No, I shouldn't say no. There's almost no benefit to that customer for hiring One Accord over hiring just a general single standalone consultant. Whereas with the new model, the new One Accords, you could say, they know, because the whole team is involved, that if there's anything that ever happens with the team member, there's enough company level information that someone else is going to be able to step in, and they're not going to be coming in cold, and they're going to have team members from One Accord that are going to be able to help them get up to speed quicker than that single consultant could. So now, even if there's no more value add than that, that is enough to remove that risk from them, where they'd rather hire One Accord at this higher rate than this single guy over here, because they know you're going to get continuity with One Accord.
Yes, and that just happened.
Yeah.
Here's real world example. One of our best operators, first of all, a superhuman being, like just a great man, was serving as an interim CEO for one of our clients, and he became ill and was unable to work. So if our client had hired a CEO and that happened, they would have to then hire another CEO.
Mm-hmm.
In our case, we had a client account manager and the interim CEO. Client account manager, is fully up to speed, aware, our consultant needed to step back and take care of health issues. We have another very exceptional, seasoned CEO that literally next man up stepped in. There was I think about a 2-week kind of time frame, but Brian was able to bring Steve up to speed and get him acclimated, and he plugged right in. And for our client, it didn't cost them the expense of recruiting and hiring and filling a position and the long delay. I mean, it was fast, and it was and we would never, I don't ever want that to be the situation. Alternatively, we had a consultant in, and just the personality vibe was out of whack with some of the people in the company, and this happens. And so we pulled person A out and put person B in, and we go. So our clients are hiring a firm with a team. And here again, it's not hiring a person, it's hiring the firm to achieve a thing, to do the thing. So these are all of the kind of things that I had to imagine as I was afraid of increasing gross margin. Like, how do I do that? Like, what's going to make it make sense? I had to make it make sense to me, right? What are these value adds? And I had to talk to people. I had to ask questions. I had to find, what are the risks and the pain points, and how can I show up differently? And the thing is, earning gross margin, here again, I think it's the most important thing that entrepreneurs can and should do, is a constant iterative game. So I was listening to Jensen with NVIDIA on Rogan's podcast. It published recently, right? And I'm thinking about NVIDIA, and there's very recent news about Google's TPUs coming out and competing with the GPUs, and all of the noise around this. That 75% gross margin is not going to be there forever. They have that because they were first to market with the best product, demand completely, supply, demand.
Yeah.
That drives gross margin. They came to market with something that nobody else had. They delivered on it, and the demand was so high that effectively they could charge whatever they want. It's not that way for me in consulting, right? And if I'm running an HVAC business or garage door repair, or I got a landscaping company, I'm not going to be able to just charge whatever I want because there's so much competition. So I have to come up with a value add. I have to be different in such a way that my clients are willing to pay me more. And I always have to be cost conscious on what it takes for me to deliver those goods or services to clients. And all of this is it's just an ongoing exercise. If I sell stuff in a store, do I buy it from Canada? Do I buy it from China? Do I buy it from Eastern Europe? Do I buy it from the US? Because all of those different areas might sell the thing that I need to buy. They're going to have a different cost. There's a materials cost, there's a shipping cost, and then there's a risk, right? There's a risk that if I'm buying it from overseas, tariffs have really, really damaged a lot of the companies that we've served, right? It's been hard. But then buying things domestically. So these are the mental gymnastics, like you said, that I went through. It's like, I can't, how am I going to charge people more? How am I going to pay people less? How am I going to do this? It's impossible. There's no way. And over again, every day, every night, it's like I'm battling there's no way.
I'm curious, did you consider, or did you think about say almost even like a performance-based pricing model? Did you think about a different type of pricing model? What kind of went through your mind with that, and why did you ultimately choose what you chose?
The industry that we're in, there are many people who will do outcomes-based pricing, a success fee, a fee on the back end. Some seek to take equity in the companies that they work with, and before my time, the company had done such things. I don't like them. I don't like it. I want to be paid cash for the work that we do, and I require that we are paid up front because I take all of the risk on delivery. So if a client hires me, they're going to pay before the first of the month for the services that we deliver during the month, and I'm going to pay the consultants at the end of the month. So I'm managing risk in between here. Because if I tell a consultant, you've got a job in January, and they get all the way through January, and my client doesn't pay me, I mean, a 1099 consultant only gets paid if the client pays me. So I have to, like, the consultants are not going to work for me if I can't get them paid. And if the client doesn't pay me, I'm not paying the consultant, right? Like that's because otherwise they're an employee. And so there's some legality to that. So I just can't guarantee payment to consultants unless I get paid up front. If we do anything on a success fee basis or on an equity basis or on a back end, that consultant is taking a lot of risk. I'm taking a lot of risk, and unfortunately, people don't always do what they say they're going to do the way that they say they're going to do it. And I'll say it this way: when our fees show up on a closing statement at escrow at the end of a year, it's a much bigger number than if they are paying 24 times throughout the year on the 1st and the 15th. And money makes people weird.
Yeah.
It just does. So
yeah.
We show up on a closing statement because they've sold their company, and there's, a $500,000 fee due to One Accord for the work that we've done. And they've, right above that, they see the federal taxes that they're going to have to pay, and they sold their company for $10 million, but taxes are 40% and fees to the banker are 5%, and then One Accord's fee, and now all of a sudden they're only getting $5.5 million off of their 10, and they just they don't like us anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know any other way to say that, because now our brand is attached to this big number that they thought they were selling their company for 10. But even though we shook hands and agreed to it up front, that, like, listen, we're going to put in a lot of work and it's worth $500,000 at the end because, we're going to help make more money for you and, all these things. I'd rather just get paid in 24 equal installments over the course of 12 months. And it's nice and simple, and we do what we do and you do what you do, and then at the end of it, you get to keep it. Now, that isn't to say that in some of our arrangements, we are compensated on the back end. Like, that does happen, but I don't factor that into our cash flow forecast. I don't factor it into the models, because it often requires someone to write us a big check after a transaction occurs, and it may or may not be contractually obligated. Even if it is, and they don't pay, I got to sue them to get the money. And even if I sue them, they might not have the money to pay, so then I got to give it to collections, and then I'm giving 50% up to the collections. Like, none of that sounds like a good idea to me.
Yeah. There's a lot to say for simplicity in business, and I think when you can, you get so set, like, the performance fee sounds great in theory, because you're compensated in relation to the value that you bring. But I think there's something beautiful about, like you said, that equal payment where with certainty, based off what payment they're making, that you can deliver a multiple of the value that you cost right there. And there's something that you get this satisfaction from that, because I love being able to go into those conversations and saying, I know what we're going to charge you, but I know we can get you an ROI well over and above what this is. And then any other benefit you get from that is just the benefit to you. And it just makes things so much cleaner. So I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. Again, not that you can never have a back end fee, but I think keeping that that structure there's a lot of wisdom in that. So
we have some investment bank. So here, the investment banking world, and we work with investment bankers a lot. And most people in the world don't know that investment banker is not the guy or gal that buys and sells your stocks and your mutual funds. Investment bankers are the people who buy and sell businesses. And we work with them a lot. And investment bankers they're called regularly, like, contact Curtis, I want you to sell my business, right? If you're an investment banker and Curtis, I want you to sell my business, and you take a look at financials and operations and you're like, Nick, you got to fix some things, right? So those investment bankers refer those people to us. They say, go talk to Nick, work with them for a couple of years, and they'll get you ready to sell and bring it back. So those investment bankers, they will share in the fees that they earn from selling the business. They'll pay us. So like, here's a company, we want you to work with them. Now, we don't count on that business ever being sold. That's like the icing on the cake. That's the gravy in terms. We're going to do the work for that company on a cash basis. And we're going to deliver, like you say, an R on the I, return on the investment. And that's exactly how I can justify gross margin. So somebody might spend $300,000, $600,000 in aggregate with us over 12 or 18 months. What that should result in, and historically has resulted in, is an increase in enterprise value in the millions. Mm-hmm. In the millions. So I have to be able to demonstrate that. I have to show receipts to then say to a client, the reason that you should pay me $500,000 to do this work for your company over the next 12 months is because other people who have done that have made $2, $4, $8, $10, $25 million more in the sale of their company than had they not worked with us. And we have those case studies on the website. We have, all of the data. We can back that up. But I would say that we didn't do a great job of telling that story under the old model. Like you said, that cognitive dissonance. If I'm sending Joe out and I'm just taking a 20%, 20% to the house for the guy being there, how do I really demonstrate that return on investment? And the breadth of the firm. The other thing that is aiding us in increasing our gross margin is technology, right? I am not a bleeding edge AI guy, right? I don't even like calling the tools that we use AI. I think it's a silly way to describe large language models and agents and so forth, but it's new, so I'll get off my soapbox for a minute. Anything that I can do with technology that makes our delivery faster, more efficient, or brings in more value. I am not at all thinking that I'm going to replace jobs with AI. I'm thinking that Joe, the consultant, can deliver 2 and 3, 4 times more value with AI. So then our clients make more money. We make more money. Joe makes more money because we're creating and adding value. And so what might have cost me, let's just say 2 or 3 FTE, right? 2 or 3 full-time equivalents, hiring people. If I had to hire people, so this isn't replacing jobs, but what would have cost me 2 or 3 FTE, I can now buy with technology, that's added value.
Yeah.
That's added value.
You're adding your flexibility if you think about it in that way of you can do lower end engagements because there's less human involvement because of the AI, but then you can also take those high end engagements and like you said, you can 2 or 3 times the value delivered to them, which is just improving the product that they get. Um, yeah, this is such a cool thing to get to talk through because the results for you guys at One Accord, the real dollars created from that margin, I can only assume has transformed the business. So how is the business different today than when you first got into the business as a result of the improved gross margins?
If I had a dollar of revenue, and in the old model I had 20 cents of gross profit, then I had 20 cents to spend on staff, coffee, internet, marketing. I had 20 cents to spend on marketing. I had 20 cents to spend on additional technology that would allow me to deliver more value to my clients. So now if I have a dollar of revenue but 40 cents of gross margin, if I double my gross margin, now I have 40 cents to spend on coffee, paper clips, internet, marketing, adding value to clients. And that's exactly what I've done, is I have invested in marketing and positioning and storytelling to reach the clients that we can serve in this model. And that's a long-term investment, right? Our mutual friend Brett Eric, he's actually here in Seattle today. Legacy Builder is a partner that has helped me over this year really expand my reach into being in front of my ideal clients, and I would not have been able to do that without the additional resource of gross margin. Couldn't have done it. Secondly, we are exploring some tools, new technologies that will allow us to deliver more value to our clients, and those things cost money. I have some additional resource to make those investments in the business.
That's powerful. And I think the tools is very clearly it's a direct correlation to the level of product that you're delivering. And some might argue that the marketing is in some sense self-serving, right? Because you're growing your business from that marketing. But what I would argue is when you do marketing well, you attract the right type of client, would give you more experience with that right type of client, which is a flywheel that then allows you to deliver better for those same clients in the future. And so both of those reinvestments end up with a better product to your end customer, which is, again, what you're after here, right? You're after building a more sustainable business where we can serve people better and we can multiply those ROIs. And I think that's something that we've demonstrated a little bit here today. As we kind of wrap up, you've now gone through this process of transforming the gross margins of your business, and hopefully continuing to do so. And knowing you and hearing how you think about stuff, I know that's going to be the case. What would you say someone that's looking at making a transformation to their gross margins within their business, what's 1 or 2 or 3 pieces of practical advice that you'd give them to not make some of the same mistakes you did or to make things easier for themselves?
Yeah. Number one, get the data. And this isn't like talk to your buddy Joe, talk to your cousin, hear from your uncle. I mean, get data, get market data, get multiple sources, print it on real paper, take a pen and study the data. You got to know the numbers. If you're in the pest control business, what are the average gross margins for pest control companies in the US? Start there. What's pricing for pest control companies in your neighborhood? Start there, right? So get data, number one. Number two, involve the team. Now, who on the team to involve, like I can't say specifically, but I like the people that are directly engaging with clients. And then I like the CFO. And if you don't have a CFO, like obviously we know where to find one, right?
Hire me, yeah.
Yeah. The engaging the team, so you've got your salespeople, your upfront, the people that are negotiating contracts and selling, right? I have to kind of take myself out of it and put a person in the middle who has the discipline, the margin discipline, who's not emotionally connected to the deal. So here's what happens is my sales guy is like, Nick, we got this great client. We're going to love it. They're great people. Here's the thing. Like, I don't think I can sell it at the 50% margin. I think we need to come down. Huge client. This is $1.5 million in revenue. And we're going to have to cut our margin down to like 35% to win this. So, I'm the owner of the company. I know those revenue numbers and I know what they mean, in the middle and the bottom line. And I can very easily start to slip and justify, right? But if you, Curtis, are the CFO and like we have an agreement, you have a mandate, then my sales guy's going to you and you're a bad cop. Like, there's no other way to say it, right? I'm good. Oh man, I'd love to do that, but Curtis said I can't. Right? He's the CFO, those darn bean counters. Like, what a useful tool for me as the owner of the company to have you there. That's, it's just like, no, listen, that's margin. I can always override it. I can say, listen, Curtis, we're gonna go to 38% on this one. We're gonna do it. We're gonna, but if it's just me selling, I'm gonna let that slip. And my sales guys are always gonna let it slip, right? So we do that. So get the data, involve the team, all of the team, and then number three is in that, it's in that discipline. So here we are today. Everybody's clear. Everybody knows. And at every engagement, I'm talking about letting margin slip. It just happens. So stay strong, stay disciplined, do ice baths, do hard things, so you can look your team in the eye and say, no, we're holding the line here.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I'd say like, this is where it's helpful to have advisors like you guys or advisors like us, because when you bring those people in, we can help you get the data. We can help you hold the line on the hard decisions, and we can hold you accountable to the commitments that you've made. Because as the business owner, it's easy to make one exception, then two exceptions, and next thing you know, you're way down the line and you're back to that 20% margin, or maybe you're at a 25 or 30, but it's still way off of where you went. And now you've made commitments to marketing, you've made commitments to tech, you've made all these other commitments, and now you have to cut loose one of those commitments. Now you can't take that AI forward approach, right? Because you got to make a cut over there. And now you're back in that cycle, and then that next consulting company is going to come who's actually taking that seriously, actually building that margin, and that becomes the slow march towards death for that business when you start making those sacrifices. So those are three great thoughts and lessons to end this. And while we've talked about, and you guys are in professional services here, these go for any type of business. Gross margins, no matter what type of business you are super important. It's always easy to make sacrifices, but for every $1 of price increase without any change in cost, that full $1 increase goes all the way to your bottom line profit, right? So if you've got $1 million of revenue and you're at a 50% gross margin, but you're able to squeak out 50,000 extra dollars, that 50,000 goes all the way to the bottom profit margins. And if your profit margin is say at 10%, and so you've got $100,000 profit, now it's 10.5% if you add that extra 50%. And over time, those changes compound, and it makes a huge difference in the way the business operates and runs going forward, and ultimately the continuation of that business into the future. So, Well, thank you, Nick, for your time today. This was awesome conversation. I appreciate you walking us through this, and hopefully people got a lot out of this gross margin discussion, and leave people with two things: is raise your prices, protect your gross margins. If you do that, everything else works out right along the way. So thank you, Nick, and I appreciate you joining us.
You got it, man. My pleasure.